Check. Check. Testing. Check. 1, 2, 3. Check. Check. I remember somebody going on to the mic one day and saying, check, check, DD, challan, money order, anything is welcome. You guys awake this morning? Yeah? Wave a hand and just tell me you're awake. All right, I don't see people waving hands. All right, okay, great. Just wait for my presentation to come up, and what a privilege it is to be here this morning, to speaking to potential leaders. In fact, all of us are leaders in some format or the other. I do a lot of leadership training back in the office and outside. Leadership is not a title. According to the great leadership guru, Dr. John Maxwell, he said, if a leader is taking a walk and turning back to see nobody following him, that person is only doing an evening walk. So if you don't have followers following you, you're not a leader. And so I want to talk to you this morning in continuation to what we heard our brothers speak earlier on two aspects. And the aspects that we're going to focus are going to be around your abilities and your God-given personality. The two things I'm going to talk to you. But I want to start off with my name. Can you see my name right there on top? John K. John. Will you forget me ever? I mean, can you imagine growing up with a name like that? I mean, John K. John. I mean, they call me John Square, John to the power of 2, King John the Second, John the Baptist. I mean, they gave me all kinds of names. But there was one name or one question that I had no answer to, and that question was from my friends asking me, John, what would happen over time if you get married and if you have children? And if you have a son, what would you call him? Would you call him John Cube? John to the power of 3, King John the Third. What would that name be? I looked at the guys and said, guys, relax, I'm still only in school. Let me see if there's one man who's willing to give his daughter in marriage to me. Let me see if that girl will say yes. Let's see if we get married, and if we have children, and if I have a son, then I'll call you guys and let you know what that name is going to be. As time went by, one man decided to give his daughter in marriage to me. That girl said yes. And now we have 3 children. My oldest is a son. And when he was born in God's own country, anybody from God's own country here? Oh, make a noise, people from God's own country. Come on, make a noise. Yeah. All right. And so, when he was born in God's own country, what was my looming question over my head? What will his name be? So I called my friends and said, hey, I become a dad. You know, you should see this guy. He's so cute. He's so fair. He's such a lovely baby. And all of them said, congratulations. One guy had the audacity to tell me, let's call him Johnson. I said, not bad, man. You're thinking way ahead of time. I said, no, that's a nice name, but I'm not planning to call him Johnson. But I deliberated on it and finally called him Jonathan. His name is Jonathan John, and Jonathan means God is given or God is gracious. And so you got to understand that there is power in your name. I don't know what your name is, but there is power in your name. That's the first thing that you need to understand. So let me back up and ask this whole thing, right? Let's go down to the slide. And I want to just focus on what we want to talk about in terms of our time that we have here. Are we getting it here as well, or it's only going to come behind? All right. Looks like we have some technical glitch. All right. Let me start by saying that all of us are unique people. One of the fundamental things that you need to understand is the power of your uniqueness. And I love talking about this subject because a lot of leadership training that I do is in the area of uniqueness. You know, recently I got certified on something called Gallup certification, and we're going to talk about later in this afternoon in the breakout sessions. How do you understand how God has wired you if you are planning to do a business in the future? If you're planning to set up your own organization, what talents do you have? What giftings do you have? Do you need to know? Absolutely. And so, one of the things that you and I need to know is that all of us are very, very unique. Now, if you look at the person to the left of you and you know that for one look, you'll know that the person sitting next to you is very unique. If you go out from this place and you go out to this beautiful place that we are in, if you look at every leaf in this particular place, if you look at a leaf,
no two leaves are similar. No two leaves have the same color. You'll probably see that God has wired everything in this world very, very uniquely. And so in a world where everybody wants to conform to one kind of a look, have you seen that happen in Hollywood or Bollywood? If there is a particular style that somebody starts off, it hits the entire nation and hits the entire country. If somebody sports a beard, all of a sudden, if Virat Kohli puts on a beard, the next fashion is everybody that we know is having a beard. And there's nothing wrong with it, but the fact is you got to know why you are unique and how God has wired you very uniquely. Are we still having some problems on the presentation? I can't see from here. Can you move on to the next slide? All right. So I want to start with helping you understand that all of us have unique giftings and talents. I mean, talk about that later. What are those abilities that you have? What are the abilities that God has given you that somebody else does not have? This is something only you have. You are born with it. And you got to know what you are born with. Many people don't understand what you're born with, and therefore they miss out the whole thing. And so I'm going to talk about this a little later, so let me move on to the next slide. So I was talking about this whole concept of uniqueness. My favorite motivational speaker is a gentleman called Zig Ziglar. How many of you have heard of Zig Ziglar? Anybody here? Okay, there are a few hands going up, so please write this name down. Zig Ziglar was America's greatest motivational speaker at one point of time. He apparently was a Christian, and he did some great, great stuff in the United States when he was alive. But he made a very interesting comment in one of his training sessions, and I love it. He said every third person in this world is either extremely beautiful, wonderfully handsome, or entirely creative. Every third person in this world is either extremely beautiful, wonderfully handsome, or entirely creative. Now, please look at the person to the left of you. Left, yeah. And tell them it can't be you. Please go ahead and tell them. I know some of you have been waiting for ages to do this. Please do it today. Look at the person to the left of you and say it can't be you. Hello, please participate with me, otherwise there's no fun. Now look at the person to the right of you and say it can't be you also. Now who therefore is the third person? The third person is you. That's right. You are the most beautiful, the most handsome, the most creative person on God's earth. Don't tell anybody or don't let anybody tell you you're useless. Hallelujah. You got to understand the power of your uniqueness. We are living in a world where people want to look at you and say, you're not as good as me. I'm better than you. Your boss, if you're working, wants to tell you, hey, you're good but not as good. Everybody in this world wants to tell you that you're not good. But there is a God who created you with you in mind, and he's telling you you're the most beautiful, you're the most handsome, you're the most creative person on God's earth. Let that be true in all our lives. And therefore, you've got to understand the power of your uniqueness. Let's go back to the slide. Let's keep moving on. So if you really look at the wild, if you go to the African safaris, and if you get a chance to watch these zebras. Now, to our eyes, those zebra stripes remain absolutely the same. But do you know that if that little zebra gets lost in the wild, it can spot its mother or its father just by the stripes? Because every stripe of a zebra is very unique. Every spot on a cheetah, on a leopard, is very unique. Everything that God has made is very unique. How then is a human being wanting to be like somebody else and forgetting how unique he or she is being created in the image of God? So you're going to understand the power of uniqueness. This is very important. If you don't understand this, you will end up wanting to be like somebody else, and you ultimately forget who you are. And therefore, be careful with that. That's what I wanted to start with. Let's move on. Now, the question, therefore, is, how are you defined? How do you define yourself? Who defines you? It's a big question. Many people don't have answers to this question. And if somebody comes and asks you, how are you defined? Who defines you? It's a kind of a question that you don't have a ready-made answer. But you got to understand that you have been wired for a particular reason and a particular purpose, and we're going to look at that. All right, let's move on. I want to start with what research has been doing around this area of finding out what brings the best out of human beings. Now, so how many of you are working? Can I see your hands up? Okay, there's quite a few of you. All right. So how do you bring the best out of somebody else? How do you bring the best out of a colleague? How do you bring a best out of a friend? How do you bring a best out of a brother or sister? What do? Give me some answers. Encourage, all right? You encourage them, right? What else? Sorry? I can't hear you, but I think you said right. All right, let's really go ahead and tell you what research is showing, all right? The very first research done in that area, or quite a number of years ago, was from a gentleman called Howard Gardner. Howard Gardner found out in America that there is something that America and the rest of the world is missing that they're not focusing on. And this is basically finding out something called multiple intelligences. Human beings have multiple intelligences. Unfortunately, many of us think that human beings have got a few intelligences and they're good in maths, physics, chemistry, bio, and a few subjects. No, 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 no. Human beings have multiple intelligences. I think he started with a study which said there are 7 or 9 intelligences, and now it comes to close to 11 of them. But let me give you an example for you to understand why it's important to know what is your intelligence. Number one, the intelligence could be in the area of sports, for example. If I take the name Usain Bolt, right? How many of us know how good he was in maths, physics, or chemistry in school? Do we really care? No. But you give him a track and field event and tell him the record for 100 meters is 9.67. What do you think he's going to do in the next race? He's going to break it. His intelligence is running. Lata Mangeshkar's intelligence is singing. A.R. Rahman's intelligence is, have you heard of Beethoven and Bach and a few others? Have you heard of them? All right. What was their intelligence in? What were they doing? Music, what? They were composing, right? They were composers of music. What are they doing now? They're decomposing. Okay, don't worry. Some of you will get it over lunch. Now, when they're alive, they were composing. But now they are decomposing. So, God has made different people with different abilities. You got to find out what is your ability. Because if you're running after somebody saying, I want to be like that guy, you're going to miss out the ability that God has given you. You got to find out what is your ability. And so he found out that human beings have got multiple intelligences. A study after this was a study, let's move on, was done by a man called Daniel Goleman. Daniel Goleman made it big with something called emotional intelligence. He found out that as people climb the ladder of success in the corporate world and in the business world, less is their focus on just intelligence on the subject, but more importance is the intelligence how to manage people. I need to understand how to relate with people. And people who are working will understand this, because the higher you climb the ladder of success in the corporate world, I'm not really concerned about how much I know on the subject. I need to know, but I need to know how to get people to do the work along as a team. So he found out that social intelligence and emotional intelligence becomes very important. Let's move on. The next thing is where I think I focus a lot in my work right now, and that's something called Strengthsfinder. I'm going to talk about it a little later. And when Gallup came up with Strengthsfinder, they found out that human beings have got talents and strengths that if you invest in them over a period of time, you will become successful. I'm going to ask you a simple question. How many of you want to be successful? Can I see your hands? All those who are not raising their hands are lying. No, you're just hearing the translation, so it'll come slowly. All of us want to be successful. The formula to become successful is to find out what God has wired you and how God has wired you and what talent and what skill and what ability He's given you so that you can move in that space to become successful. Many people are still finding the answer even after working 30 years. They haven't found out what is their talent. It's so sad to see people coming to work day in and day out and still have lost it because they haven't understood what their talent and strength is. Okay, let's move on. And then there's something called passion. You know, we are just looking at World Cup and we're looking at how the minute Virat Kohli steps into the ground, there's a chant on his name. Why do you think people chant his name? Why do you think people chant Dhoni's name when he gets out? Because these guys are passionate about what they do. They understand the game so much and they want to perform their best every time they get to a cricket ground. And that's passion. Look at anybody. Look at this very complex that we are in. This is a reason, this is the outcome of a passion of a man, his dream, his vision, because he had a passion to touch lives and touch souls. That's what you need to know. What is your passion? What are you passionate about? I love, Sir Abdul Kalam's definition of a dream. It always stay with me. He says, dreams are not what you get when you sleep. Dreams are what you get so that it gets you not to sleep. Do you have dreams like that? That will wake you up in the middle of the night and get you to ask this question, what are you going to do next day morning when you step out of your house? Dreams is what you need to have. You need to have that kind of passion. And so, look at this. How many of you would love to do this? Can I see your hands up? Oh, there are 2 hands of 1 person going up. I'd love to meet the gentleman. Now, you pay me $1 million also, I will not do this. Because I'm worried about that hook right there. Because if that snaps, there will be something called the famous last words. You know what the famous last words will be? Oops, my parachute is not opening. And I don't want to do this at all. But there are so many of you who love to do this because it's your passion. I just want to enjoy life. I want to enjoy some extreme adventure like this. It's passion. All right, so you got to understand passion. And they studied passion, and they found out, I think you're covering this tomorrow, but let me quickly give you some things about people who are passionate people. Passionate people live long lives. How many of you want to live long life? Rest of them again lying. But there is a beautiful quote of a man who was speared to death in Ecuador. When they opened his diary, this is what he said. Lord Jesus, I don't want to live a long life. I want to live a short life like yours, and I want that life to be impactful. I don't want to live a long life, Lord. I want to live a short life like you, and that life has to be impactful. Some of us are praying for long life, but people who are passionate invariably will live long. All right, let's move on. People who are passionate will be healthy people. People who are passionate will live happy lives. People who are passionate will be productive people, meaning when they come to work, they will produce results more than the average people because they are passionate about what they do. I hope my speed is okay because there's some translation happening. Where are my translation brothers and sisters? Am I too fast? ठीक है? Speed? हमारा speed ठीक है? Madam? Listening? No, I think I'm going over their heads. Okay, I'm sorry about that. But passionate people are productive people. But I love the last point. Passionate people are also reproductive in their nature. You know what it means? If you work with somebody who's passionate, soon you will be passionate. And your passion will touch the next person. And sooner or later, the entire team will be passionate. That's what happened in Jesus' life. That's what happened because Jesus was passionate. He left everything. He left heaven's glory, came down as a human being. And when Peter and James and John touched Peter and touched Jesus, the passion on Jesus rubbed onto him. And all of them became passionate. That's what happens when you work with passionate people. I wonder if any of you have a passion and a dream to do something big for God. And you got to keep asking that question. And God did not bring you into this conference just to listen to a few people and go back. He's going to ask you that question. What's the purpose that I put you in this place? What's the reason? What are you going to do for me and my kingdom? How passionate are you for the kingdom of God? He's going to ask you some questions towards the end of the 3rd day, and you better have answers for them because you've invested 3 days of your lives for a good cause. All right, let's move on. So when you study passion, it's pretty sad that globally only 15% of the world population are engaged population, meaning to say they'll come with passion. 15% who come to work every day. Can you imagine? Now, let me give you another slide for you to understand what I say. So let's move on to the next slide. Take a look at this. Now, for those who are students, just change that daily job modes to daily school modes or college modes, and you'll get the answer. Now, this is a reality for 99% of the world population. Can you look at that Monday face? I really pity the guy going to work. What day is today? Tuesday. Let's look at Tuesday. Now, this will not be the face. Yeah, you're all smiling. But at work or school, that will be your face. By the time you hit Wednesday, you're crying. You're saying, this is too much. I can't take it, Lord. This is too much of a cross. Take it away from me. And look at Thursday. Look at Friday. Oh, look at Saturday. Wow, what a day. Saturday. Look at Sunday. He's pumped up, man. Bring it on. Sunday. What happened to Sunday night, though? Now, the Sunday night issue is becoming an issue not just at night, it's becoming an issue even by the afternoon. Let me give you some statistics. They found out that majority of the heart attacks in Germany happen on a Monday morning. And around 9:45 in the morning. Now, this is true research data. And you know why? You got to understand this. How many of you know a few Germans? Have you met Germans? Worked with Germans? Is there a German in the house? Okay, I can see somebody. All right. But if you work with Germans, they are extremely productive. If they say 8 hours of work, it's only 8 hours of work. They put their blood and sweat into 8 hours of work. And so what happens is between Monday and Friday, the heart is under extreme pressure. 8 hours of work, pressure, 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 pressure. Then Saturday and Sunday is time for themselves. So pressure moves into something called pleasure. And this happens week on week. So they finish their pleasure life on Saturday and Sunday and comes back on Monday, it back into pressure. And then at some point of time, the heart is not able to take it and then they get a heart attack. So you got to understand that this is a reality of life. How do you go to work? You know, why is all the restaurants called Thank God It's Friday? Why is it not called Thank God It's Monday? That's an idea for somebody who's planning to start a restaurant business. Anybody who wants to start a restaurant business, please call it Thank God It's Monday, because we need restaurants which will celebrate a Monday. And the only way you can celebrate a Monday is to be passionately involved in the job that you do, and you got to find out from the Lord what it is. Otherwise, you're going to waste your time in your career. All right, let's move on. So I want to just quickly take you through 2 assessments for you to understand your abilities and your personality. The first type of assessment is called a type assessment. The second one I'll tell you a little later. The first one is a type, and I want you to do an exercise. Can you all please take a notepad? You have your notepad. Take your pens, and please write this statement down 3 times. I use my strengths every day. Please write it in any page of your book. Open an empty page, and please write this 3 times on that sheet of paper. I use my strengths every day. All right? 3 times. You know, there was a smart guy when I went to an camp. He wrote it once, and within brackets, he put 3. I mean, I saluted that guy. The guy was only 11 years old. Please don't do that. Write it 3 times. How many of you finished? 3 times? Okay, some are still writing, so please, I'll give you a few seconds. Please write it 3 times. Okay. If you finished writing 3 times, if you're a right-hander, move the pen to your left hand. If you're a left-hander, move the pen to the right hand, and please write this 3 times again. You understood what I said? Shift the hand, and now write it 3 times again. Some of you are looking at me and just smiling. You don't even want to attempt. You're saying, what's wrong with you, John? I can't do it. Okay. Now let's see what happened the first time around and the second time. What happened when I asked you to write this with your natural hand? Can I get to the next slide? There's something called preference. You prefer to do one over the other. And therefore, when I asked you to write this 3 times the first time, you did not ask God and say, God, what day is today? Is it Tuesday? what hand do I normally use around 11:45 in the morning? You didn't ask God all those questions. You just took your natural hand and wrote it, correct? And when you wrote it with your preferred hand, it was easy, it was quick, you didn't have to think, it feels like me, it was comfortable for a long time, and it came naturally to you. This is what you should really be doing every day of your life. There are preferences that you have, and it should naturally flow. But when I asked you to shift the hand and got you to write with your wrong hand, that becomes the non-preferred hand, and the non-preferred hand was awkward, it was slow, hard to concentrate, feels slightly alien, soon becomes uncomfortable, but with practice, it can become better. For example, if I tell you to write with your wrong hand for 6 months, in the 7th month, what will happen? You will feel comfortable, correct? Now, this is what happens to our life every single day when we get to work, when we get to college, when we get to school, because you adapt to your environment and you forget how God has wired you naturally. And you forget that natural way, and you then move into something which is unnatural. That's what it takes time. That's why it takes time for you to learn a few things. There are some things that will come naturally to you. If you want to be successful in life, pick out what it is and move into that space and be good in it. That's what will help you to be successful, all right? So a study done by a mother and daughter combination, which made it big news almost for 75, 80 years, this has been in the human resources side of things to find out personality assessments, is what I'm going to share with you. So let's go to the next slide. So you have something called the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, which will help you understand what is your personality type, okay? So you got to find out what it is, and I'm going to help you understand this. So let's identify 4 different or 16 different types, and we'll find out how it is. So there are 4 opposites that you're going to see, and the ways we naturally prefer to doing it. The first one is, let's do the first one. How do you get your energy, and how do you direct and get your energy? Do you direct your energy from inside yourself, or you get your energy from outside of yourself? There are some people, for example, me and my wife are complete opposites. And I'll share that a little later with you. Complete opposite. And how many married folks are here? Can I see your hands? Some hands are going slowly up. Okay, no problem. But you're still married. All right? And I can bet you that your spouse is completely different from you in every single aspect, and God brings the two of you together and then tells you, live happily ever after. How do you do that? If you don't have God in it, God save it. All right? You got to understand why your spouse is different from you, and we'll find that out. So how do you get your energy? I'll give you an example. I love being with people. I love being outside. I love being involved in things outside of my house. My energy comes from doing things outside of who I am. But there are some people in this room, their energy comes exactly the opposite. They want to be inside of themselves. They love reading a book. They love cooking. They love staying in the house and decorating the house. They love cleaning the place. Their energy is inside. They don't need to get out to get energy. So you got to find out whether you're the guy who goes out or the person who stays in. And the way you use it is something called extroversion versus introversion. So I want you to make a choice right now. Are you an E or are you an I? You can take only one of the two. You can't take both. Are you an E or are you an I? Please do that right now. Are you an E or are you an I? Extroversion is where the energy comes from outside of you. Introversion is something that comes from within you. Are you an E or are you an I? All right? Let's move on to the next one. So once you get that energy, how do you take in information? Do you take in information by your senses, by what you see, by what you smell, by taste, by touch, or you somebody who gets it by gut feeling? You know, there are some people who make decisions, big decisions, just by plain gut. They'll tell you, they look at it and say, great idea, but I don't think it's going to work. They are people who use the gut, all right? But there are some people who will never make a decision without actually sensing it, seeing data, without which I can't make my decision. So, are you an S or are you an I? Make a choice between S and I. Let's go to the next one. And once you take it in information, how do you make your decisions? Are you a thinking person or are you a heart person? Are you somebody who goes with your mind or are you somebody who goes with your heart? Are you somebody who love being kind to people? Or are you somebody who does not mind telling that person you made a mistake and you better say sorry? Are you a thinking person or you're a heart person? So choose between T and F. And the last one, how do you organize the external world? Once you get your energy, once you take in information, once you make decisions, are you somebody who plan everything in your life, or you actually go with the flow? Are you somebody who plan? For me, in life, everything revolves around a plan. Without a plan, I can't do anything. For plan is important, or you're saying, no plan, I'll just go. There are some people here who will not go out without planning everything on their way. If I'm coming to Coimbatore, everything is planned. Some people say, Coimbatore, let's go. Where is it? I don't know. I'll find out. GPS is there. So are you a J or are you a P? All right? So this is one of the assessment, and we'll talk about that. Let's move on to the next slide. And therefore, if you get the 4 types, you will get one of these 16 personality types that you'll fall in. So you'll get those 4 alphabets. Have you got 4 alphabets on your page? Right? You'll fall in one of these, and you can read about all of this on Google. There's so much of information about your particular type. All right, let's move on. The second assessment I want to just spend some time is something called a trait assessment. Type assessment is different from a trait assessment, and I'll tell you what the difference is. The trait assessment, let's move on to the next slide, is something called the Strengthsfinder. Gallup has found out that there are core personality traits that men and women have that you need to find out what it is. And because you do this assessment, you will get your top 5 strengths or talent as a person. For example, if you remember my first slide, it said John K. John, and below that were my 5 traits. Those are my talents, exclusive to me. That's what defines me. So if you want to know what your top 5 talents are or strengths are, then you got to do this assessment. It's called the Strengthsfinder 2.0. It will give you your top 5 talents or strengths as a person. All right, let's move on. I love this slide. Let's look at this slide. This is what Gallup shared a few months earlier with me. This is the top 5 talents of people from different countries of the world. And if you really look at India there, number 1 is responsibility. Number 2 is relator. Number 3 is learner. Number 4, restorative. Number 5, achiever. Now, if you see all the countries that participate, you will see them very different from one another. If you do the assessment, you will get your top 5 in your order of assessment that you did. And it's very important to understand why God has wired me very, very different from everybody else. And that's what makes me distinct and different from somebody else, right? And we got to understand that. All right. I just want to share with you what's the difference between trait and type. Let's move on to the next slide. Let's move on. The difference between type and trait is, type says how you are similar to a certain population of people. So when you do the MBTI, it'll tell you you are similar to so many people. But when you do the trait assessment, it'll tell you how different you are from everybody else. Which one do you want to do? The second one, obviously, because it'll tell me how different I'm from everybody else. I need to know how God has wired me differently. Am I good in singing? Am I good in dancing? Am I good in cooking? Am I good in administration? Am I good in networking? What is my gift? What is my talent? You got to find that out using the second assessment, which is a trait assessment, and that is what you can probably do. All right. I'll just finish off with one more thing, and then we'll close. One of my favorite characters from the Bible is Joseph. Joseph, if you really look at him at 17 and when he became 28, there was a fundamental shift in Joseph and who he was. And I was reading the Bible. I've read Joseph so many times, over and over and over again. But when I read it one last time, God gave me a revelation that day, and I said, oops, I've never seen this before. How did I miss it? Let me share with you what God revealed. When he was 17, what happened to Joseph when he was 17? Somebody help me. Somebody help me. When Joseph was 17, what happened? Sorry? He celebrated. No, he got 2 dreams from God. And when he was 17, he got 2 dreams from God, and God gave him 2 dreams. Now, you know what happened because of those very dreams. He was hated by his brothers, brothers tried to kill him. They put him in a pit. They sold him as a slave to Potiphar. He was a slave in Potiphar's house. His wife, Potiphar's wife, had an evil eye on Joseph, and for doing nothing wrong, he's now being put into a prison. When he was around 28 in the prison, you will see Joseph from 17 to 28. Something happened in Joseph's life that you never read in the Bible. When he was 28, he was not only able to see dreams from God, he was now able to interpret dreams of God. That's what happened to Joseph. And I wonder if there are young men and young women in this place who are saying, I want to be a Joseph in today's times. I want to be a Joseph, not just get a dream from God, but able to actually give somebody else an interpretation of their dream. Because that's what happened to Joseph. By 28, he was able to interpret the two people who came to the prison. By the time he was 30, he was able to stand in front of the most powerful man in that century and interpret his dream as well. You know why? Because Joseph had a fantastic relationship with God Almighty and is deeply rooted in God, and that's why he was able to do it. I wonder if any of you really know what your strength is, if you understand what your talent is, and saying, God, I know you've given me a gift of singing. I know you've given me a gift of music. I know you've given me a gift of preaching and talking and presenting, but Lord, I don't want to stay here. Take me up. Take me up. And when you skill it and when you invest in it, you will become successful. And that's what happened in the life of Joseph. And I want you to leave just with that. And I think that should be the last slide, I think. Is there anything after this? Yes, okay. I love this statement by my ex-boss, Anand Pillai. He said this, God has made us unique. Don't die a cheap copy. Look at the person sitting next to you and say, God has made you unique. Don't die a cheap copy. So I want to wish you all the best, even as the Holy Spirit moves in this place and keeps nudging you and talking to you and saying, this is what it is. This is why I made you. This is the dream I'm giving you. This is what I want you to do for the nation of India. I want you to be receptive to what God is going to speak to you in the next 3 days. And when you get out of here, go and make a difference wherever God has placed you for the glory of God. Thank you so much.